latest episode of the 1796 Titans Pod, season 2024, week one preview. So, got a big game coming up this Sunday against the Chicago Bears. There's going to be a lot of eyes on the game. Obviously, it's first game of the season. Playing against Caleb Williams, the top pick in the draft. There's going to be a lot of eyes on this one. So, it's going to be an interesting game. Currently, the Titans are 3.5-point dogs, which is basically means it's a draw, pick 'em, because it's home field accounted for is about 3 points or so. So should be a pretty even game. Obviously, we'll dive more into that, what we think, how it's going to go, all that. We're going to hit on just some of the latest rumblings from practice reports, who the inactives are probably going to be. But, something we didn't really get to talk about yet is the roster. So I want Ryan and Jack, we all know what the 53-man roster looks like. And I wanted to start off today by talking about, how different this roster is compared to last year, first of all. And second of all, some of the position groupings are kind of strange, like how many people we kept at certain positions and then how thin we are at others. So that's what we got on store for today. And then obviously we'll end with a prediction for week one, recap, preview the whole game. So Ryan, Jack, what up, boys?
How's it going, man?
It is going. So Ryan,
Yes.
First of all, let's talk about what was your initial takeaway from the 53-man roster. I know off air we talked about it quite a bit. But what really stuck out to you, on the initial depth chart?
I think the main thing is 5 tight ends. Not something you see very often. The Malik Willis trade, somewhat unexpected, but it's better to get something from that rather than just having him as a third string emergency quarterback. And then the final thing, just how the roster ended up, is Ernest Jones now is the linebacker next to Kenneth Murray.
Thank God. Jack, what about you? What really stood out? I know you were surprised about a couple things. What position group or player, either inclusion or exclusion, kind of what surprised you?
I was surprised that Gabe Jeudy-Lally, he didn't make the roster. However, he did make the practice squad, so kudos there. And then Jabari Small also making the practice squad as well. And so I know for our Vol fans, that's a big plus. And I think Jabari really showed out really well in the last preseason game. But going over the present roster as is, like I was saying, the tight ends, there's a lot. And so that's very interesting. You would think that would be more like a Mike Vrabel type of thing. We're trying to block more. But I think really they're going to start using a lot of these guys as fullbacks. Thomas Odukuye, Nick Vannett, those guys that are kind of back at the end of the line there, are going to give some good resources for Will Levis to kind of use both in the run game and in the pass game. For Will and Tajay and Tony Pollard. But definitely it's great to see that Ernest Jones, we picked that pickup, so that way we don't have to deal with too much with Dr. Gibby. Okay. Although he might be starting this week, I think they're probably just waiting on Ernest Jones to get more of the playbook because he just got in last week. But yeah, I mean, the roster presently constructed as is, it looks pretty good, and I'm ecstatic for Sunday.
Yeah, pretty much what y'all said. I mean, I don't understand the 5 tight end thing. The one that is odd to me is Nick Vannett because, I mean, obviously Chig and Wiley are gonna see 99% of the snaps at the position, and then Odukoya made the team because of that hustle play that we all saw where he ran 107 yards on one play.
Yep.
And then, DMR made the team because he was the best tight end in the preseason. So, those 4 make sense, but I don't really understand what a veteran journeyman who doesn't block. I don't really understand his inclusion. Um, and then, with the defensive line, it kind of makes me nervous because, like, if Jeffrey Simmons or Sebastian or Tavondre come down with the flu, we just have no backups on the D line. Like, the only backup is Coburn, and there's nobody else on the depth chart. Which there are two on the practice squad, but like that's kind of strange to me. I thought Isaiah Iton or even Abdullah Anderson. Like, I mean, I know it probably threw a wrench in the plan when Marlon Davidson and TK McClendon got hurt, but I'm a little surprised how thin we are there. And then originally there were like 20 inside linebackers, but that's kind of cleared up a little bit because Garrett Wallow, Chance Campbell, and Cedric are currently hurt. So it's actually not as deep as we thought it was going to be. And then the corners is weird too because, like you said, Jack, I thought Judy Lally had a really good chance. I mean, he was way better than Guerrer or Trey Avery, which neither one of them made the team either, thank God. But there's only 5 corners, which I thought was a little light. I mean, the fifth corner is Daryl Baker, who was a waiver claim from the Colts. So, like, instead of Judy Lally or Tay Gowan or Guerrer or Trey Avery, they went with a waiver claim, which I thought was, it speaks volumes about how they felt about the guys that they had. And then I guess the last thing I'll say is the running backs. That surprised me a little bit too because Pollard and Spears, like tight end, Pollard and Spears are going to play 99% of the snaps, but Chestnut's the only backup. I wanted Jabari to make it for obvious reasons, but I was surprised they didn't add a waiver claim to, like somebody that is a little bit different, like a power back. I'm surprised they only went with those 3. But other than that, I mean, I like that we kept 6 receivers. We kept the right 6 receivers. The secondary's deep. I mean, you have 5 safeties. Overall, I think it's a good roster. I think it's a competitive roster. Who was the player that y'all were the most surprised didn't make the team?
Well, that's a tough one.
I'll go first since I thought about it. So I'm not gonna say Judy Lally. He'd probably be second. I would say the one I was most surprised was Mason Kinsey. If the dude can't make the team this year, he's just never going to make it, I guess, because he's been around for 5 years now, and this was by far his best camp and preseason. And let's call a spade a spade. If you're going off of what they've done on the field since they've been in Nashville, he deserved to be on the team over Treylon. I don't think that's even a hot take. Treylon is only on the team because he was a first-round pick. That's the only reason.
Bingo. For me, Bryce, I mean, just take your pick of any of the defensive linemen we could have kept instead of Nick Vanette. I mean, again, just take your pick. I think it's, like you said, concerning to only have 4 D linemen. So that's my pick.
Yeah, and so what I'm going to go with, I'm going to go a little bit of a curveball and one that I wrote about a little bit, but I'm going to go with Braden Arvison, okay, kicker.
Yeah,
he was my guy, man. If you can hit a 60-yard field goal, and that thing was right down the middle, and then hit a game winner. I know it's just the preseason, but Nick Folk's time is ticking, and we know he can't. He's not good to hit 50 plus yards. I worry about that. And so the second most scorer in terms of points on your team does come from your kicker. And, how many times has the game come down to a kick and the Titans just can't get into field goal range or whatever the case may be, and then they miss the kick? Now, Nick Folk, he has been pretty steady, but he's not anybody that for the next 3 to 4 years I'm going to be pretty excited about. And so we weren't able to retain Narvison. He got picked up. I can't remember by which team.
Packers, he's playing right now.
That makes sense. And so that was my biggest worry is the kicking position. I've been a big proponent of getting a strong kicker who can make field goals because that is such a crucial position and it's so hard to find a consistent kicker and who can hit 50 plus yarders. So that's for me, Braden Arvison.
It is pretty surprising. I mean, he's pushing 40, and you had a kid in camp, like you said, who could, at least in the preseason, make from 60. So I agree with that, Jack.
See, the thing about it though is like I do agree with it, um, and a lot of people talked about, they compared it to the Brett
Kern and
Kern decision.
Stonehouse. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a little different to me because, like, how often is a punter going to lose you the game? Like, very rarely. Like, you can afford to take a more of a risk on that. I think with Nick Folk, they know, like, if it's within 50 yards, the dude ain't missing. And I think it kind of points more to, like, they are playing. I mean, we already think this, but it just kind of is another point that shows that they're not trying to suck this year. They don't think it's a rebuilding year. Like, they think we're going to be in a lot of close games where a veteran kicker is going to help. That's my takeaway from that. I mean, I was really hoping Narvison, like, ideally in a perfect world, Folk is the kicker this year and Narvison is the kicker going forward. Like, but I knew he wasn't going to last on waivers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like realistically, Nick Folk has one more year, and that's
Right.
it. Right, he's gonna be 40 in October or something like that this year in season. He'll be 41 next season. He's not gonna gain any more yardage on his field goal kicks. He can barely kick 50 now. So at some point, and I understand why they did it, but we have to look towards the future because that is such an incredibly hard position to find, and we've been snake bitten often from that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. So we had Narvison. Ryan went with everybody that got cut on the D line, and I went with Mason Kinsey. Overall, though, I don't think there's too many spots that you can really complain. I mean, most of the guys that we complained about, not everybody but Narvison, that we complained about not making the team is on the practice squad right now. So they didn't really lose anybody of note. But anyway, going into week one, obviously everybody, I mean, in national media and people that aren't Titans fans, everybody thinks we suck. And everybody thinks Caleb Williams is the next, like, Dan Marino. So I don't think anybody's surprised that we're 3.5-point dogs. The line actually did move. I saw a tweet today that makes me nervous because, not to give anything away, but I feel pretty good about our chances in this game. But I saw a tweet today that said we are the most popular public betting side of the weekend. Like, Titans plus 3.5 is getting hammered right now, and that makes me think we're going to get killed. But I want to throw it over to you, Jack. Just your initial – and for those of you who don't know, I actually write about the Bears as well, so I have some pretty good insight here. But I want to toss it to Jack and then Ryan. What your initial thoughts going into this matchup?
Yeah, so my initial thoughts are, well, one, I'm just so excited that the season has started. Like I can't even begin to tell you, 8 months, 9 months. It's been crazy. And so what I'm really excited to see is how the offense gels together. I think the most important thing that kind of underlooked, because I don't want to go with the obvious, but underlooked is how the offensive line is going to gel together because these are, besides Peter Skoronsky, none of the other guys have played alongside each other. Peter Skoronsky is the only one that's been there basically kind of in the same position, whereas Dylan Radin's been playing right tackle, right guard, left guard whenever Peter was out. And so it's like a brand new O-line. And so they're gonna need some time to gel, and it's a really young O-line too. So, but I'm really excited to see how that all comes together because we obviously know we can't do anything without a decent O line, and I think this O line has the potential to be top half of the league, just based off of Cushenberry, Skoronski. He's getting better. J.C. Latham, I think he's going to be pretty good, and then of course the addition with Bill Callahan, that's only going to elevate those players along the offensive line. So I'm still worried about the right tackle position. I'm not completely buying into MPF, but if he can just be decent, then that's enough for me. And so that's one of the key things that I'm kind of going to be looking at, is seeing how well they work together come Sunday.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
not to cut you off, Ryan, I don't think NPF can be decent, and that's one of the things I'm worried about. But Ryan, go ahead.
um, well, it's hard not to think, just an initial look at the Titans' first game is, the thing to be most excited about is what the offense could look like if everything is clicking. But since you already said that, Jack, I'll go with the defense. I'm excited to see what the defense looks like with new D coordinator Denard Wilson, seeing how he calls that defense. I mean, based on the preseason, he's going to be hyper aggressive. And if the Titans are going to win this game, they have to make Caleb Williams look like a rookie and get after him. So that's, if I wasn't going to say the offense, that's what I was going to say. Just how do they attack Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I think to be even more specific, the defense, like the secondary. So like right now, we know for sure Jamal Adams is not playing. He's been ruled out.
Yep.
We know Otis Reese at linebacker isn't playing. I doubt he would have played much anyway, but he's out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cheeto is also questionable. So go ahead.
I was going to say, I did see a tweet by, I think it was Teron Davenport, who said he should be good to go. And it was just basically a kind of a
formality.
Yeah, a formality kind of thing, just trying to give him some rest. And so they just put ankle or whatever the case may be, kind of on the injury report. So he should be good to go, because I saw that a few hours ago.
Well, that's good, because I'm really anxious to see, because on paper, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this. On paper, the Titans secondary might be the most improved unit of any team of any position in the league. Like going from Sean Murphy Bunting and Christian Fulton to Cheeto and Sneed, on paper that should make a pretty significant difference. Now, obviously, I'm not expecting them to gel perfectly on the very first day, but I am curious to see how Cheeto and Sneed and McCreary, at the nickel, see how, if they can keep Caleb Williams. Like, is he going to look like USC Caleb Williams, or is he going to look, like a rookie quarterback? So, I mean, I'm not going to lie. You can't overreact to one game, but I am going to be a little concerned if our new look secondary gets shredded by a rookie in his first game.
Yeah, that would definitely be concerning.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have – I mean, there's going to be people open. He's going to make some flashy plays, unless he has a Jameis Winston's debut. Remember that, Jack? We were in the group chat when that happened.
Beautiful, beautiful. That was one of the best days of my life.
we thought we were going to go to the playoffs in Mariota's first year, and we only won one other game the rest of the season. Yeah, that was the good old days. But no, as far as like the Bears go, so I don't know how much y'all keep up with the Bears. I mean, you obviously know about the sexy additions like Caleb and Roma Dunze and Keenan Allen, but I do think the Bears have potential to be a sneaky little team this year. I don't think they're a playoff team yet, but I do think they're much improved, obviously. Keenan Allen doesn't really scare me anymore. I mean, the dude gets hurt getting out of bed in the morning, and Roma Dunze scares me, but it's going to take a little bit for him and Caleb to get chemistry, I would assume. DeAndre Swift is their running back. I mean, he's a great running back. He's a pass-catching back. That's somebody you got to watch. They have a really good tight end, Cole Kmet. He's always a threat over the middle. So their offense has weapons, and their offensive line is not bad either. I mean, they have a Vol legend playing right tackle.
Mhm.
So their offense, I think their offense can put up points. I don't think this is going to be like a 13-9 type game. On defense, they have one of the best corners in the league, and Jalen Johnson. Jaquan Brisker's a really good safety, and then their linebackers are really good. They're good against the run. You got TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. Both of those guys are always near the top of the league in tackles. The one weakness, glaring weakness, they don't have a pass rush outside of Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat, this is a funny stat. So they traded for Montez Sweat at the trade deadline last season. And so my point is he only played half the season with them. And he led them in sacks by a lot. Like and they did nothing this offseason to address that either. So they have Montez Sweat, and that's it. So if y'all remember, their other starting edge is DeMarcus Walker, who played for us a couple years ago.
Yeah, last.
So I think this should be a nice little tune-up game for our line to gel, because you don't have a Max Crosby, you don't have a Micah Parsons, you don't have somebody like that you have to deal with right away. So I think that will help a lot, especially if Petit Frere's the weak link, which I think he is. You can give him a little bit more help on the end. Maybe that's what the 5 tight ends are for. But yeah, I think on paper we actually match up pretty well, which I alluded to earlier. I said I felt pretty good about it because I do think, you can throw on this team. I don't think our running game will be that great just because those linebackers are really good. And I do think Pollard and Spears are going to get involved in the receiving game quite a bit. But yeah, ultimately we'll hold off on final score and win-loss, but I do think both teams are going to be able to put up points. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of the same. When I was doing my preview, I was looking at the Bears and some of the additions they made. Kind of sneaky addition, Gerald Everett too, from past Chargers tight end, and historically tight ends destroyed the Titans. And so I was looking at their D line, and their D line doesn't really scare me. Mainly Tremaine Edmonds, but if we can get Tajay Spears to the second level, get Tony Pollard to the second level, pass those frontline guys, I feel pretty good about the matchup there. I do think they're going to use Tony Pollard. I think probably will get the majority of the snaps just based off of preseason and the fact that he's a vet, and he's also bigger, so they'll probably get him some goal line carries as well. And so, Jalen Johnson's there, of course. He'll probably be on Calvin Ridley. And so we'll have to see about that. But I did check out Tyreek Stevens, who's basically our version of Eric Garror last year, and he's starting on the other side of Jalen Johnson. And so hopefully we can get a good matchup there with them and, expose those different types of weaknesses. But I really feel like our offense probably does have a slight advantage over their defense. And, of course, they don't know what we're going to be running. They don't know what type of offensive system, Brian Callahan has. They have, Cincinnati, but Cincinnati was mostly, Zach Taylor's offense. And so it'll definitely be interesting that we kind of have these small little things, small advantages. But I think overall for the offense, they're going to find some success, but I don't think it's going to be, shredded paper type of success, destroying the Bears defense by any means.
Ryan, what say you?
Well, just talking about Titans offense versus Bears defense, the biggest advantage is who do the Bears have playing center field at free safety?
Well, Jaquan Brisker's really good. He's
free safety.
I know where you're going. I didn't even think. I forgot about that.
So one, Kevin Byard, who got traded to the Eagles, and basically coincided with their downfall. Yeah, and now that the Bears picked him up, and look for the Titans to have some success over the middle of the field, maybe even over his head. But pretty much what Jack said. I think the Titans do have a chance to have some success. Nothing crazy, but it just all depends on the O line for me. I think that's the key to the Titans' offense. I mean, it's been like that for the last 2 years. That's why the offense has stunk. So it's got to be the line. They have to get it done against a unit like you said, Bryce, that isn't very effective at getting after the quarterback, save for Montez Sweat.
Well, it's like what I said about the corners. Like, if these corners let a rookie quarterback dot them up in his first game, that's concerning. It'll be equally as concerning if our line looks like dog shit against one of the worst pass rushes we'll play all year.
Yeah, precisely.
And, I mean, back to what you said about Byard. I cannot believe I forgot Byard is on the freaking team. Now I definitely think we're going to win. Listen, Jack doesn't agree with me here. I know he doesn't, but Kevin Byard had one great season and a bunch of average seasons, and everybody acts like he's prime Ed Reed. I mean, the dude single-handedly was the worst by PFF. When he got traded to the Eagles, he was the worst safety in the league for the rest of the season. I don't think he magically got better again.
He wasn't even the best safety on the Eagles that went to MTSU. Like, what he was horrendous as soon as he left the Titans, and he was even worse before that.
I mean, listen, as a person, he's awesome. He's a great guy, like super nice. He loves the city, but Kevin Byard isn't scaring anybody. It's not 2018 anymore. But yeah, I think we all are pretty much in agreement there. Like, you can put points up on this defense. You should be able to. I'm excited to see just a non-variable offense and defense. To be frank, I mean, like, I don't remember which one of you said it, but even in the preseason, we could tell the defense was a lot more aggressive. And like, if you listen to what the players have been saying this offseason, all summer, they've been talking about how they're free to be themselves and how they feel like they're learning and, like, you know, unleashing their full potential, just taking subtle jabs at Vrabel. I mean, we all know he's an egomaniac, but, like, the players kind of validating that is interesting. So it'll be interesting to see. Like, I think there will be several phases of the game that look nothing like what we're accustomed to seeing from the past few Titans teams.
Yeah. I mean, just touching on what you said about our defensive players, you know, taking shots at Vrabel subtly. I mean, what defender who's getting paid millions of dollars to, you know, be a defender in the secondary would want to play off until they get to the 20-yard line? Like, it's more fun to actually try and do your job outside of the red zone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. But yeah, for sure. I mean, it's great. I know those kind of subtle jabs have been, you know, kind of coming out more and more lately from the guys on the roster. But it's definitely like you can see like what, you know, Coach Callahan and Rand Carthon were creating together. Like, when you look at, you know, they want a tough, physical, smart team, and they go out and get, you know, Calvin Ridley to plug a hole. They get J.C. Latham. They go trade for L'Jarius Sneed. They see that they have a hole at linebacker. They go get Ernest Jones the fourth. You know, it's just a completely different team, and it looks like it's actually being competently run. You know, whereas for years and years and years, we go into the season with the biggest bums on earth playing cornerback. Okay, and we go into the season with bums at inside linebacker. You know. And it's consistently like everything has been such a hit, and I'm really, really excited, especially, you know, thinking about Tavondre Sweat with Jeffrey Simmons next to him. I mean, you can't double both of them. It's just not going to happen. And so I wrote about it. You know, the interior O line of the Bears is going to have their hands full. You know, literally. And
it's the weakest part of the line too.
Yeah,
Nate Davis.
And so I think what's going to happen is Denard Wilson is going to shoot those A gaps, you know, with Kenneth Walker Jr. or Gibby / Ernest Jones the fourth, you know, create pressure from the interior, because that is the worst type of pressure for any quarterback. And relying on Harold Landry and Arden Key to stay home, you know, on the edges, so that way, you know, Caleb can come to him or come to them. And so, you know, I'm excited, you know, just like all of y'all, about seeing, you know, such a completely different team mindset mentality that, I appreciate what Vrabel did for us, but I think, just one, not even a season, into this, you really get to feel. I know they haven't played a real snap, but you really get to feel, the 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 team aspect that Brian Callahan and GM Rand Carthon really came up with, and they really, really competently spent time together to figure out how to build this roster. And it's one of the best rosters the Titans have had, like, period, in terms of history, almost period. Besides, the Super Bowl year and the early 2000s, it is that, it is really good. Um, so I'm really excited about that.
Well, how many years, Jack, did we spend bitching in the group chat about like, oh, this guy's still available. We should go sign him. And like we never do it. Like we would never do it. Like John Robinson's like, why would we sign this all pro when we can have a white undrafted free agent instead? Like,
Yeah.
and
Why do we need to sign AJ Brown when we can draft Traylon Burks?
yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, Eric Garrer and Trey Avery, they're good enough. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Mhm.
no, dude, like Saskatchewan Roughriders don't think they're good enough. Like, and now we have a GM who's like, oh, you know what? Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams are available. I'm going to scoop both of them up. Oh, Dr. Gibbons thinks he's starting again. Yeah, that ain't happening. Rams,
Yeah,
give me Ernest Jones.
exactly.
Like, that is, it's just, it's exciting to see. And I don't, I don't buy into like moral victories at all. Like, don't hear what I'm not saying. But even if we suck ass this year, like, even if we win 4 or 5 games, I, I'm going to be pissed. Don't get me wrong. But at least Rand and Amy are trying. Like, they're spending the money. They spent almost every dollar they could possibly spend and be under the cap still. Like, they made several trades. Like, this isn't this is not a loser front office. This isn't a front office that is like everybody in national media just assumed that we were just going to suck ass this year and not try. And they're like, well, no. I mean, do rebuilding teams trade draft capital for veteran Pro Bowlers? Like, no. I mean, and, as a fan of the Chicago White Sox in baseball, it is very encouraging to see a front office that is willing to make bold moves and spend money and at least try to field a competitive team. Like, if we don't end up competing this year, that's fine. At least we tried. And, we're trying to build something competitive. If you're a team that doesn't even spend money, like the Colts, for example, like the Colts are notorious for not adding players when they probably should. Like they try to do everything through the draft. And a ton of Colts fans were pissed because we got Diggs and Adams and they wanted, one of them. They wanted Snead too. And it's like, if the Colts don't make the playoffs this year, everybody's going to remember that shit. And it's just good to have a GM that's not afraid to fucking make a call. Like, sure, the Chiefs, I guarantee you the Chiefs didn't want to trade Snead. And John Robinson wouldn't have even made the call.
Yep.
So, with that being said, it's prediction time, boys. So, we've laid it out there how we feel about the Titans roster, how we feel about the Bears roster. So now we'll go one by one. We'll give a kind of like a brief summary of how we think the game's going to go, and then we'll go with a final score. So, Jack, start us off.
Yeah, so I think the Titans are going to get after Caleb Williams. I have full trust in Denard Wilson that his game plan is not going to be conducive to Caleb Williams lighting up the Titans whatsoever. And so I think it's going to be a rough day for Caleb Williams. I don't think he'll still have his moments for sure. He'll have his highlight plays, I think, but overall that is going to be a big issue. And then, I think L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie and the rest of the secondary are going to do what they need to do for the most part to slow down, uh, you know, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore. I mean, Jarius Sneed already held DJ Moore to 1 catch for 4 yards last year, so I feel good about that. And then on the offensive side, I think we're probably going to see uh, you know a good mix of run and pass. I think they're not going to be necessarily married to passing it all the time because I think they're going to have enough success driving the Bears front seven back enough that we'll continue to hammer that down, and we're going to utilize screens for sure. I think we saw a little bit of that early in the preseason from the past 3 games. And so I think Levis is going to have a good game. I don't think he's going to necessarily have a great game because of Jalen Johnson mostly, but it's going to be a good matchup. And so what I got the Titans 24 and the Bears 21.
Nice.
Ryan?
So there's one simple fact. The last quarterback drafted number 1 overall to win his debut game was David Carr 22 years ago. That amount of time can now drink. So it's been a while since that has happened. And I'm in agreement with Jack. I think the Titans will win. I think the difference in the game, especially for a road team in the NFL, is a lot of times just the field position battle and special teams as a whole. And I think the Titans will have their best special teams unit in a decade plus. Since like Rob Baronis and Mark Mariani and all of that, because you have Karius Jackson back there, you have a reliable kicker from 40 and in, 45 and in really, and you have Ryan Stonehouse. I think that's going to make a huge difference in the game. I know that's a boring thing to talk about, but it's super important, especially when you're on the road. And then finally, I think the Titans O-line will do a good enough job at protecting Levis, give him the time he needs to spread it to all of the new weapons that will be at his disposal. So I'm going with the Titans 23, Bears 16.
All right. Yeah, I think surprisingly, I'm very rarely the optimistic one. Like typically I'm the more pessimistic one, but I'm actually pretty optimistic right now. Like I think this could be the game where Will Levis kind of introduces himself. I know for a lot of people that was the Miami comeback last year, but a lot of people still, for some reason, think he's trash. So it would not surprise me if Will Levis has a monster game. Like I think he's going to be amazed just being on the field with legitimate NFL players for once. I think, like you said, I think the screen game will be big. And I think regardless of whether Nuke plays or not, I mean, obviously you'd want him out there. At worst, he's a good decoy. But still, I think Levis will find the end zone a couple times. I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up 280 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, something like that. As long as the line can keep him upright, I think he's going to have a big day. I'm going Titans 31, Bears 20.
We're breaking the 30-point curse, all day one.
I really do, because Callahan has put such an emphasis on that. Like, he made a comment last week about how, they're going to try to hopefully break that several times. So, why not start off? What better note to start off on than that? You break the stupid curse, and Levis looks like a legit, future star. I think this is the only thing that would make it better is if it was in Nashville, because Soldier Field isn't the easiest place to play, but still, I'm confident. I think we have the better roster, and like Ryan said, rookie quarterbacks don't look great in their debuts typically. So,
Sir Marcus Mariota.
Well, he was playing against the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, I'm proud of you, Bryce. It's rare that you predict the highest point differential.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm a new person, I guess. Now, there will be a time come like mid-October where I'm like, back to my old ways, I'm sure. But we're going to start off positive. I do really feel good about this team. I think it's honestly ran, to be honest. Like, the fact that we have a GM who, like, isn't like some dweeb who got shoved in lockers in high school. Like, we have a GM who actually tries. That's really the thing. Like, he's just cool, and he's not afraid to make bold moves, and I think that's going to be rewarded.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
y'all touched on it for a few minutes. Like the whole attitude around the team from the front office down is just completely different. It's a 180 from even 10 months ago. So
I did want to point out one more thing. So we already talked about how the Bears defensive line is like not intimidating at all. Well, it's even worse because one of their starters is already ruled out. Zach, so Zach Pickens is not going to play. So an already thin line looks even worse. So without Zach Pickens, you have Andrew Billings, who's a veteran journeyman, and Gervin Dexter. So, I mean, it's even shallower. Keenan Allen and Montez Sweat and DeMarcus Walker are all listed as questionable. Now, we don't know, like, it could be like a Cheeto situation. All of them are going to play. They're just getting a rest day. They're all veterans. But that is something to keep an eye on. Like, their two best edge rushers and their best receiver might not play.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something to keep an eye on as we get closer. I'm sure not all of them will actually miss, but it's interesting nonetheless. So I did. We won't get too deep into it, but do you guys think, just try to be as unbiased as possible, do you guys think that this is a playoff team, the Titans?
Yes, they are a playoff team in terms of talent for sure. Just talent alone, they are a playoff team.
Ryan?
I think they are.
What sucks about it is, like, if you didn't have the Titans, like, if you just covered up the depth chart and you asked 100 people, like, I'm pretty sure all of them would agree this is a playoff caliber roster. The problem is our schedule's brutal. Like, it's the fourth hardest based off of last year. And I know Ryan hates that stat, but what the hell else are you supposed to judge it on? It's a hard schedule, and the AFC is so loaded. Like, that's the only thing that worries me about it. If we were in the NFC South, I would predict us to win the division, but we're not. I mean, we're in the AFC where almost every team has an elite quarterback. So that's why that question's a little hard for me, because I think this is a double-digit talent roster. I really do. Like, I think this roster's talented enough to win double-digit games. I just don't know if it's going to happen with the schedule we play in the division we're in.
Well, Bryce, it's like you said, if you put this roster in Cowboys uniforms, people would be predicting them to go like 12-5.
But that's also because the Cowboys have a much easier schedule. Like, they're in the NFC, and a lot goes into that. But yeah, I mean, I do think that. I really do think that. I think they're like, well, it's the Titans. Like, they're probably not going to do it. And everybody thinks CJ Stroud is the next Jesus Christ. So that doesn't help either. But it's definitely going to be interesting. We'll know a lot more this time next week. But I don't want to overreact, though. I mean, we'll know more, but we won't know everything. I mean, we're either gonna be like, well, I'll speak for myself. I'm either gonna be way too negative or way too positive, because I tend to go up and down on these things. Like, if we do what I predicted, then I'm gonna think we're going all the way. And if we have some like bullshit fluky loss, I'm gonna be like very depressed. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I sometimes I was watching the game last night. I was like, I don't know if I want to lose by a toe or just lose like legitimately off of a field goal, you know, from last night with Isaiah Likely losing the game basically for a little toenail outside the white line.
Well,
So
I'll tell you this. I watched the Steve McNair documentary on Netflix that just came out recently,
yeah,
and I thank God that I was a toddler when that happened, the Super Bowl, because as a full-grown man, I cannot fathom how heartbreaking it would be to lose a Super Bowl by a freaking yard. Like, I would call out of work for at least the next 3 days.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you how I figured it out. So I was at MCRD San Diego. I was in the Marine Corps at the time in boot camp. And then I got mail call, and it was like July 11th or 12th. And my mom used to send me news clippings, because
Mm.
obviously didn't have cell phones and all that. So she sent me news clippings of like the Yankees and all the other stuff that was going on during the time period. And then two things hit me at once. Steve McNair died, Michael Jackson died. And I was just like, I cannot believe this. Like
Didn't
it
it
was like
literally happen? Wasn't it not the same day?
I thought it was the same day, but it was definitely like the same like week or something like that. And so just very like strange. Like, can you imagine just like completely cut off from the rest of the world, and then you get mail one day, and then all of a sudden Steve McNair, your childhood, hero, and Michael Jackson, who's also the greatest pop star of all time, dying on the same day. It was not a
Yeah.
good time. Not a good.
No, that's
That's that's insane.
that's horrible. Yeah, me and Ryan were like 11 when Steve died, and it was. I remember at the time, like you're a kid, you have a short attention span. I was depressed, but I wasn't like I didn't cry or anything. But like,
Yeah, I was riding through the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and heard it on the radio, and I was just like, I remember being shocked, but yeah, Bryce, I remember just rolling off my back a week later.
yeah,
Like
but like,
if that happened now, I'd like I don't know what I would do.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I shed a tear or two during that documentary, like,
Oh
but
yeah,
I mean, yeah, that and the Super Bowl loss by a yard, like, come on, man, that's. But anyway, it's all only up from here.
that's right.
All right. Any other parting shots y'all want to get off before we get out of here for week one?
Would we want to discuss D Hop?
Yeah, we do need to touch on that. I forgot about that. That is an interesting. I did mention we don't know if he's going to be out there, but so the injury thing is kind of wild. So back over the summer, I mean, everybody knew he got injured, but it was reported as Jack. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it not reported as a meniscus tear?
Originally,
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think they just said it was a knee issue because you didn't have to report that it was an MCL tear back then.
Well,
You
somebody around the team said something about a meniscus, and it's like, I mean, I don't know if this is going to surprise anybody, but I'm not a doctor. But meniscus doesn't sound as like serious as ACL, MCL. Like those are the ones that you're like conditioned to like, oh shit, that's bad. Well, it turns out he actually did tear his MCL, and it seems a little crazy to me that he's even questionable for week one because it happened in like July, which
yeah.
is weird. Like that seemed. I mean, Jack, you know more about this type of stuff than I do. Doesn't that seem like a very quick timeline?
Yeah, I mean, they were originally, reporting Paul Kaharski was, I think, the first one on it, talking about it because he was at practice and he caught a ball or whatever, and then he went inside and it didn't really look like much of anything. So we really, for a lot of reporting wasn't necessarily, certain on what exactly the knee injury was. Now, of course, now I was looking it up, but there's different like grades of MCL tears. So there's like a 1, a 2, and a 3, and obviously, the different severities. So when we don't know what type of tear it was, whether it's like a small tear or a larger tear. And so, originally the timeline was 4 to 6 weeks, and basically 6 weeks is, I think, was Thursday because it happened on a Thursday, I believe. And so So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, Taylor Lewan came out a few days ago, I think, on his podcast, and he said that DeAndre Hopkins, he has it on good sources, not going to play week 1. So that's what Taylor Lewan said. Now, of course, he's still pretty plugged in with the Titans. I obviously hope that's not the case because D Hop, was getting interviewed just, yesterday, by a lot of the reporters, and he was saying, he feels good, and it's mostly about managing pain because there's nothing you can really do. It's not necessary. And Brian Callahan was also asked about it, and he said, it's not something that you can make worse by playing on it. So it's really just up to D Hop. And I think D Hop has that dog in him. So I think he definitely wants to be out there, and he definitely wants to play. So we'll have to see what type of D Hop we're going to get. That's with this type of injury.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to me, just just looking at it, just based on everything I've read, I mean, it was an injury that didn't require surgery. And in Teresa Walker's article this afternoon, D Hop was quoted as saying, we'll see Sunday, but he did dismiss reports that he's ruled out already. So, like you said, Bryce, even having him as a decoy would be huge. If he's not able to go, I guess we'll be relying on Traylon Burks and Jaquan Jackson. So,
I don't think I could do Traylon Burks anymore.
No,
at wide receiver 2 or higher. I don't even think wide receiver 3. Put NWI.
Yeah.
NWI has tripled Traylon Burks' production, and he was a UDFA.
Yeah, I was just saying that Burks would have to play more than he would have. So
yeah, we can't have that.
It's literally like it's not just a zero sum. Like if Traylon, sometimes when Traylon's in the game, he like actively is a negative. So but I digress. I think like you said, Ryan, regardless of whether or not Hopkins he's obviously not going to be 100% either way, but just having him out there, it's somebody else you got to worry about. It's less field time for Traylon. And I mean, Jalen Johnson, like we talked about, their best corner is going to be on Ridley. So I don't know. It'll be interesting for sure. We will do a recap / preview of week 2 sometime next week. So anything else before we get out of here?
Just pray for no injuries. Sunday. That's the most important thing. So a good game, of course, and obviously a Titans win.
Yeah. Well, last thing I'll say is we still have, a few more hours of the eternal optimism of the before the season. So I'm going to enjoy it while I can, and hopefully they live up to our expectations on Sunday afternoon.
One last parting shot. Derrick Henry got like 40 yards last night. Haha.
Got a touchdown too.
Tighten up, baby.
Tighten up.
Tighten up.